Welcome, my friends. Today, I'm going to tell you a revenge story in which a sister-in-law's devious scheme turns out in the most scandalous way possible. Enjoy the story. Rachel slammed her half-empty cocktail glass on the bar. "Can you believe the nerve of that woman?" she ranted to her best friend Tina. "She treats me like her personal slave." "Oh, come on, Rach, it can't be that bad," Tina replied, sipping her cosmopolitan. "Margaret may be demanding, but at least she provides you a cozy life in that swanky mansion. Most widows would kill for that setup." I know, but I feel so trapped, Tina. Ever since Adam died, she's been unbearable." Rachel signaled the bartender for another drink. "She controls every penny of the family fortune. I'm completely at her mercy." Tina patted Rachel's hand sympathetically. "Just grin and bear it, babe. What other choice do you have?" Begrudgingly, Rachel had to admit Tina had a point. Where else would she go? What would she do for money? Rachel was in her early 40s with no job experience or marketable skills. Catering to cranky old Margaret, as demeaning as it was, beat the alternative of total financial ruin. Tossing back the rest of her cocktail, Rachel climbed unsteadily off the bar stool. "I better get home before Her Majesty sends out a search party. Thanks for listening to me vent, as always." "Anytime, girl. You know I got your back." The two friends hugged goodbye. Pulling her coat tightly around her, Rachel headed down the street, her heels clicking on the sidewalk. The autumn night air felt crisp and sobering. Just 3 more blocks to the subway station. Suddenly, a shadowy figure stepped into her path, nearly causing Rachel to stumble in her tipsy state. Her heart rate spiked with fear. "Excuse me, miss." A gruff male voice emanated from the gloom. "I think you dropped this." A hand extended from the darkness, holding Rachel's wallet. "Oh, thank you," Rachel mumbled, squinting to make out the man's features under the dim streetlights. She could see tattoos snaking up his muscular arms. His eyes had a certain intensity that made Rachel shiver, and not just from the cold. Snatching the wallet, Rachel hurried away down the block, momentarily forgetting her unease in her haste to catch the next train. She didn't notice the man watching her retreating form, a curious half-smile playing on his lips. "And just where have you been?" Margaret demanded as soon as Rachel stepped through the front door. The old woman sat rigidly on an antique chair in the foyer, arms crossed. "I went out for a quick drink with Tina," Rachel replied wearily, shrugging off her coat. "I told you I would be back by 10. "It's 10:17, Margaret snapped. "I've been sitting here worried sick. Anything could have happened to you, gallivanting around the city at this hour." Rachel bit back a sharp retort. Margaret treated her like a misbehaving teenager, not a grown woman. It took all of Rachel's self-control not to scream that she was a 43-year-old widow, not a child. "I'm sorry, Margaret," Rachel said with feigned meekness, lowering her gaze. "It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't." Margaret sniffed disapprovingly. "I expect you to be here when I need you, Rachel. Is that really so much to ask after everything I've done for you?" "No, all you've done is trap me in this joyless life as your 24/7 nursemaid." Rachel fumed silently. Aloud she said, "Of course not, Margaret. I'm very grateful for your generosity." "Good. Then stop running off all the time. You have responsibilities here. Leaving a frail old woman to fend for herself, honestly?" With an aggrieved sigh, Margaret creaked to her feet and tottered off down the hall to her suite. Rachel wanted to tear her hair out in frustration once Margaret was out of sight. This is what her life had become. A never-ending cycle of nagging guilt trips and servitude to that miserable crone. A wave of despair crashed over Rachel. She sank down onto the bottom step of the sweeping staircase and buried her face in her hands. How much longer could she endure this suffocating existence? Her once vibrant spirit felt as if it was slowly shriveling up and dying, day by monotonous day. Rachel's self-pitying reverie was interrupted by the chime of the ornate grandfather clock in the hall. 10:30 already? She needed to get to bed if she had any hope of rising early enough to prepare Margaret's usual breakfast and pills. Climbing the stairs, Rachel paused outside Margaret's closed door. She could hear the television droning inside the room. Some insipid game show, from the sound of the canned laughter and cheesy music. The noise set Rachel's teeth on edge. "Just walk away," Rachel told herself. But she couldn't stop herself from pressing an ear to the polished wood, straining to hear if Margaret required anything further tonight. Worthless ingrate. Margaret's muffled voice seeped through the door, evidently talking to herself. After all I've done, all I've given her, and still so ungrateful, should have cut her off when Adam died. Tears of anger and hurt pricked at Rachel's eyes. So that's what Margaret really thought of her. A worthless ingrate, an unwanted burden. Maybe I should just leave, Rachel thought wildly. Pack a bag and disappear into the night, never to return. But reason quickly prevailed. Where would she go? How would she support herself with no money, no family to turn to? Rachel was utterly dependent on Margaret, and they both knew it. That's what made the situation so maddening. No, Rachel needed a more calculated plan than simply running away. She needed to find a way to turn the tables on Margaret, to seize some measure of power and control. Suddenly, an idea began to take shape in Rachel's mind. A wonderfully wicked, dangerous idea. She hurried to her room, shutting the door with exaggerated quietness. Rachel paced back and forth, pulse racing as she worked through the finer points of her scheme. Yes, this could work. This could change everything. For the first time in 3 years, Rachel fell asleep with a smile on her face and devious plots dancing through her head. "You're going to what?" Tina nearly choked on her latte. Rachel leaned forward, eyes sparkling with barely contained glee. "I said, I'm going to hire a caregiver for Margaret, but not just any caregiver." Taking a sip of her cappuccino, Rachel savored Tina's look of shocked disbelief before continuing. "Remember that shady-looking guy who returned my wallet last night? Well, I'm going to track him down and convince him to take the job." "Are you insane?" Tina hissed. "That dude is probably an ex-con. You want to let him loose in Margaret's house?" "That's the genius of it, don't you see?" Rachel grinned. "This isn't about getting Margaret an actual qualified nurse. It's about making her life miserable, giving her a taste of her own medicine for once." Tina set down her cup, brow furrowed. "Rach, I know Margaret is awful to you, but this is taking things way too far. It sounds seriously unhinged, not to mention dangerous. What if this creep hurts Margaret, or robs her blind? You could go to jail." Rachel waved a dismissive hand. "I'll make him sign an ironclad contract with a strict NDA, and I'll tell Margaret that I thoroughly vetted him. She'd never suspect a thing." "Until it all blows up in your face," Tina retorted. "I'm begging you. Think this through. Revenge fantasies are one thing, but you're talking about putting an unstable criminal under the same roof as a helpless old lady." "Margaret is hardly helpless," Rachel scoffed. "She's the most obstinate, controlling witch I've ever met. Turnabout is fair play." Tina exhaled heavily, seeing that her words of caution were falling on deaf ears. Rachel had that manic gleam in her eye that meant her mind was made up. There would be no talking her out of this half-baked scheme. "I hope you know what you're doing," Tina said at last. "Just promise me you'll be careful, okay? Don't let this blow back on you." "I'll be careful," Rachel promised. Draining the last of her coffee, she stood up. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a bad boy caregiver to go hire." "Do you know why I asked you here today?" Rachel inquired, steepling her fingers. The tattooed man from the other night sat across from her in the dimly lit diner booth, looking wary but intrigued. He cleaned up well, Rachel had to admit. A snug black turtleneck and dark jeans showcased his fit build. His ice-blue eyes seemed to pierce right through her. "I assumed you wanted to thank me again for returning your wallet," he replied, a touch sardonically. "But something tells me you have an ulterior motive." Rachel allowed a small smile. "You're very perceptive, Mr. Vincent, just Vincent." "Vincent." Rachel rolled the name around on her tongue. "I'll get right to the point. I want to hire you." Vincent's eyebrows shot up. "Hire me? To do what exactly?" Rachel leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. "I need a caregiver for my elderly mother-in-law, someone to keep her preoccupied and out of my hair. I have a feeling you'd be perfect for the job." Vincent regarded her skeptically. "No offense, but I don't have any experience as a nurse, and I'm guessing your mother-in-law would prefer a sweet little old lady to take care of her, not a tatted-up tough guy. On the contrary, I think your edginess is exactly what she needs." Rachel's smile turned wicked. "See, between you and me, my mother-in-law is a grade-A bitch. Making her life difficult is actually the whole point of hiring you." Understanding dawned in Vincent's eyes. "Ah, So this is more of a torture the old bat gig than an actual caregiver job. I gotta say, that's a new one. Rachel huffed a laugh. Something like that. Look, you'd be generously compensated. I'm talking 6 figures off the books. All you'd have to do is keep the miserable crone occupied and push her buttons until she's ready to tear her hair out. Vincent studied Rachel appraisingly, a slow grin spreading across his striking features. Lady, you're either crazy as hell or my dream client. You know what? I'm in. When do I start? Rachel's heart rate kicked up a notch. His devilish smile promised all sorts of thrilling trouble. She slid a thick manila envelope across the table. Right away. Here's your contract and first month's pay. Remember, not a word of our real arrangement to Margaret. Let her think you're a legitimate home health aide. Lies and deception? Now you're speaking my language. Vincent tucked the envelope inside his jacket. This is going to be fun. They shook on it, Vincent's large calloused hand engulfing Rachel's slender one. His touch sent an illicit shiver down her spine. What had she just gotten herself into? Vincent Capello, meet my mother-in-law, Margaret Walsh. Rachel made the introductions with barely concealed glee. Margaret raked Vincent with an imperious once-over, her pencil-thin eyebrows climbing nearly to her silver hairline. This is the best caregiver you could find? He looks like he belongs in a biker gang, not a retirement home. I assure you, Mrs. Walsh, I'm highly qualified, Vincent said smoothly, laying on the charm. I've cared for many elderly clients and have glowing references. Appearances can be deceiving. Margaret sniffed, unimpressed. She turned to Rachel. I don't like this. I don't like this one bit. Couldn't you have hired a nice motherly woman to look after me? Now, Margaret, don't judge a book by its cover, Rachel chided. Vincent comes very highly recommended. I'm sure you two will get along famously once you give him a chance. Margaret harumphed, but stopped arguing, much to Rachel's relief. Phase 1 complete. Now to sit back and watch the fireworks. Over the next few weeks, Rachel took great pleasure in eavesdropping on Vincent and Margaret's interactions. She'd rigged up discreet cameras all over the house to monitor them. Just as she'd hoped, Vincent seemed to delight in subtly needling Margaret, playing dumb when she asked for things, and accidentally mangling her strict diet and medication schedule. Oops, you wanted your pills before breakfast? My bad, Vincent exclaimed in mock chagrin one morning as Margaret glugged down her orange juice. Guess I mixed that up again. I'll try to remember next time. You've been trying to remember for days now, Margaret griped. Exactly what are we paying you for if you can't even handle my basic needs? Rachel, where are you? Come deal with this imbecile. But Rachel simply bit her lip to keep from laughing out loud, watching gleefully on the camera feed. It was so vindicating to see Margaret getting a taste of her own frustrating medicine for once. As the days went on, however, something shifted. Margaret seemed to be warming up to Vincent, much to Rachel's disbelief. She caught them chuckling together over private jokes, thick as thieves. Margaret started taking extra care with her appearance, too. One afternoon, Rachel peeked at the camera to find Margaret all dolled up in an elegant dress and makeup, hair perfectly coiffed. She and Vincent were waltzing around the living room to some old-timey love song. Oh, Vincent, no one's twirled me around the dance floor like this since my dear Albert passed, Margaret simpered, gazing up at him adoringly. I find that hard to believe, beautiful, Vincent murmured, pulling her closer. A stunning woman like you deserves to be swept off her feet daily. Rachel grabbed the camera, nearly crushing it in her fist. What the hell was going on? Vincent was supposed to be Margaret's worst nightmare, not Prince Charming. How dare that backstabbing scuzzball cozy up to her sworn enemy? She was going to get to the bottom of this. No more spying and skulking around. It was time to confront those two conniving snakes face to face. What's the meaning of this? Rachel demanded, barging into the living room. She gestured wildly at Margaret and Vincent, who sprang apart with guilty expressions. Rachel, we were just, Vincent stammered. Margaret cut him off, drawing herself up regally. I believe I'm the one who should be asking that question. Why are you intruding on our private moment? Private moment? Rachel sputtered. Are you serious? This lowlife is your employee, not your boy toy. Have you lost your mind? Vincent bristled. Hey, I may be a lot of things, but I'm no boy toy. Hush, darling, I'll handle this, Margaret purred, patting his arm. She turned steely eyes on Rachel. That's right, I said, darling. Vincent and I are in love. He's brought joy and passion back into my life, feelings I haven't experienced in years. I won't let you ruin this for me. Rachel gaped at them, stunned. This had to be some sick practical joke. You barely know him. He's a degenerate con man I hired to make your life hell, not sweep you off your feet. What is wrong with you? Margaret smiled knowingly. Oh, you naive girl. Did you really think your pathetic little scheme would work, that I wouldn't see right through it? She took Vincent's hand, interlacing their fingers. The truth is, Vincent and I have a history. We knew each other decades ago, back when I was just a wild young thing. We had a torrid affair that I never quite got over. Imagine my surprise when you delivered him right back into my life, gift-wrapped. Rachel shook her head in disbelief. No, this is insane. You're both insane. What's insane is you wasting your life as Margaret's miserable lackey, Vincent said, not unkindly. Trust me, I'm doing you a favor by taking the old broad off your hands. How dare you? Rachel shrieked. I won't let you two lunatics destroy everything. Margaret held up an imperious hand. That's quite enough hysterics out of you, Missy. Vincent and I are getting married, and that's final. You are hereby released from any further obligation to me. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork to remove you from the will post haste. Now kindly see yourself out. Rachel stood there, stunned and sputtering. This couldn't be happening. In trying to make Margaret's life a living hell, she had somehow managed to give the wretched woman everything she wanted instead. It was so infuriatingly unfair Rachel wanted to scream. You can't do this, Rachel cried. I'm family. I'm all you have left of Adam. Margaret's eyes hardened. You stopped being family the day you decided to emotionally blackmail me. I can see clearly now that you never cared for me at all. Vincent has shown me what real love and devotion looks like. She smoothed a possessive hand down Vincent's chest. My darling has big plans for us. Plans that don't include sour-faced ingrates underfoot. You've got 30 minutes to pack your things and go. Rachel looked desperately to Vincent, who merely shrugged apologetically. Rage and despair warred within her as the crushing reality sank in. She had gambled everything on this revenge plot and lost spectacularly. Margaret had outplayed her, just like always. You'll regret this, Rachel gritted out, fighting back angry tears. When he takes you for every penny and leaves your ancient ass in a discount nursing home. Remember, you chose him over your own daughter-in-law. With that parting shot, she whirled around and fled up the stairs to throw her meager belongings into a suitcase, the mocking strains of Margaret and Vincent's laughter chasing her out. 1 year later. Rachel! Hey, Rachel! At the sound of her name, Rachel looked up from the shirt she was mechanically folding and refolding at her cashier station to see Tina waving frantically at her from the department store entrance. I'm not supposed to talk to customers until they reach the register, Rachel called back dully. Tina bustled over anyway, impeccably coiffed and designer-clad as always. She swept a critical gaze over Rachel's rumpled uniform and weary face. Oh, honey, Tina sighed. I had no idea things had gotten this bad. When was the last time we talked? Rachel shrugged listlessly. I don't know, months ago? Does it matter? My glamorous life of serving bitchy housewives at Bullseye is pretty much the same every day. Tina pursed her lips. I'm so sorry, Rach. I should have been there for you after the whole Margaret fiasco. I just didn't know what to say. And then you dropped off the grid. It's fine, Rachel said curtly, in a tone implying it was anything but. I needed some time to lick my wounds in private. Losing literally everything in a crazy scheme gone wrong takes a toll on a girl, you know? Speaking of the she-devil, Tina said hesitantly, did you hear about her and Vincent? A sour taste filled Rachel's mouth. No, but I'm sure you're dying to tell me. Let me guess. They're still blissfully shacked up in the mansion while I rot away in this capitalist hellscape. Not exactly, Tina hedged. They're married. Married? The shirt Rachel was folding ripped in her clenched hands. Tina nodded, nose wrinkling. In some lavish June wedding in the Hamptons. It was all over the society pages. Margaret was decked out in a Vera Wang original, looking like a geriatric Queen of England. You have got to be kidding me. Rachel said faintly, feeling like she might pass out. I wish, Tina said. Apparently it was a whole big to-do, with champagne fountains and ice sculptures and everything. The old broad sure knows how to throw a party. Bile rose in Rachel's throat. The idea of those two wrinklies making googly eyes at each other at the altar was enough to induce vomiting. It was too much. The unfairness of it all made Rachel want to rage and sob simultaneously. Well, I suppose I should congratulate them, Rachel spat venomously. Maybe I'll send a his and hers set of Depends undergarments as a wedding gift, Tina snorted. Please, we both know you can't afford fancy adult diapers on your bullseye budget. A strangled noise that was half laugh, half sob burst out of Rachel. She collapsed against the checkout counter, burying her face in her hands as the resentment and despair crashed over her in waves. I'm never going to get out of this place, am I? Rachel whispered brokenly. I'm going to be a bitter retail drone forever, while Margaret and Vincent skip off into the sunset with my inheritance. Tina awkwardly patted Rachel's shaking back. Hey now, don't talk like that. You're still young and gorgeous. Once you save up enough cash, you can blow this popsicle stand and start fresh somewhere new. Rachel shook her head miserably. Who am I kidding, Tina? I have no marketable skills, no higher education, no rich husband. I'm damaged goods. I had my chance at an easy life, and I blew it spectacularly. She pushed off the counter, sniffling and furiously wiping her eyes. You better go before my manager sees me having a meltdown with a customer. Thanks for the juicy gossip, I guess. Tina bit her lip, clearly torn between staying to comfort her friend and fleeing the emotional minefield. Okay, but promise you'll call me soon. Maybe we can get mani-pedis my treat. A little self-care does wonders. I said go, Rachel lashed out, voice cracking humiliatingly. Just go back to your perfect frigging life and leave me alone. Flinching, Tina scurried away, Louboutins clicking a rapid staccato beat on the dingy linoleum. Rachel watched her go through a film of tears, chest heaving with the effort to pull herself together. The manager stalked over, beady eyes narrowed in irritation. What's the problem here? Why aren't you servicing the register? The term servicing made Rachel's skin crawl, as did the lascivious once-over he gave her tear-splotched face and half-buttoned polo. Pig. You know what, Hank? I quit, Rachel declared, voice still wobbly but steely with resolve. She yanked off her name tag and threw it at his feet. I quit this dead-end job, this dead-end life. I deserve better, and I'm damn well going to go find it. Ignoring Hank's blustering protests, Rachel marched out of Bullseye with her head held high for the first time in a year. Fresh air and sunshine slapped her tear-stained cheeks as she burst through the automatic doors into the parking lot. Tina was right, in a way. Rachel was still youngish, still breathing. And where there was life, there was hope. She'd been delusional to think hitching her wagon to Margaret would be an easy ticket to security and comfort. No, if Rachel wanted to rise above her circumstances, she needed to wisen up and start relying on her own wits and will to survive. Screw Vincent, screw Margaret. She didn't need any of them. She just needed an opportunity and the gumption to seize it. Pulling out her phone, Rachel did a quick Google search for Job Single Women Over 40. A sponsored ad for an upscale private poker club seeking classy female dealers caught her eye. Rachel felt the first stirrings of a wicked smile. Dangerous half-baked scheme, here she comes again. But this time, she'd be dealing the winning hand. Margaret and Vincent had better watch their backs.